We have some guests here. We're going to jump ahead to old business. This meeting is open to the public, but it's not a public comment meeting. So we're just going to conduct regular business and discuss the CV Plastics application first so that our guests can hear about it.
Good. I think the best way to walk through this is, and by no means is it necessarily fully comprehensive, but between the public hearing, but more importantly, I think some of the questions you all have had, really since our last meeting, there's been really significant correspondence, not only from Terry, who represents CV Plastics, but also from Varun. So I attempted to sort of aggregate that in somewhat of a logical way as opposed to trying to find all the different documents that have come. That doesn't mean that it's necessarily, as I said, like perfectly in order, but I think it's a good resource. So it's up to you all whether you want to walk through them in the order I gave them, or you all just start bringing up issues. From my perspective, the open items are, I'll just go with kind of a review of existing operations of CV Plastics and their other locations, the Chat GTP issue, the PVC pipe manufacturing, although that would probably be pretty short term. I wish I didn't do these double-sided. That's a pain in the neck. Next being, I hate that. The injection sort of molding process issue and any kind of emissions related to that. That included those MSCS sheets, which took up a ton of space. And then sliding away to that, maybe things that are much more germane to our normal discussions, which is really the employment projections, both quantity and type of job, some of the broader benefits of the project that are sensitive to environmental issues, and then lastly, we always, as you know, as a result of IDA activity, conduct a written cost-benefit analysis. You all have seen that seen it before. That was done by the MRB group, but I included that as well. So I'll let you guys decide what path you want to take.
If I may just interject my thought. To start with, I think there should be at least some conversation, recognition on the record of the amendment to the application that was made. And that was done through a letter by the applicant's attorney, Mr. Terry Burton, along with, I believe, an attachment from Mr. Varun.
Okay.
The primary adjustment of which, and certainly just note for the record as well that Mr. Varun are here, as is his attorney, Mr. Burton. So we open.
Good morning.
Good morning. Excuse me. This portion at least. I think the board would invite any comments from either of you as we work through these conversations. But the primary adjustment is the redaction of any type of PVC plastic manufacturing from the application. That's really the primary goal. I know the goal of their amended application was to point that out. And within the letter, you'll see that it was noted the PVC component of the project was always intended to be a secondary phase of some sort. And their job projections and their request for financial assistance was never based on that secondary step anyhow. So they've just simply withdrawn it in the face of some of the raised concerns. So is that a fair statement?
That's correct.
Okay. I thought that was an important place to start because that's clearly an amendment to the application, and many of the other things can be considered really further information with regard to the application, but that was an amendment, so I wanted to point that out first. But from there, certainly we can go in any direction you want.
I think the other big concern was the process, just how it works. I know it was addressed in a letter. I don't know if Varun wants to just explaining this where it's also just the process as far as the, how it works and how it's a closed system and the safety of that as far as emissions. I know that was a big concern by the board.
Mhm. And in your packet to that, you have both the YouTube videos that you were able to watch, but also
Todd, are you looking for a verbal statement from the applicant, Mr. Burton or Varun? I know that it might be
Yeah,
hard
if
on them.
either of them can, I mean, I know it's addressed in the letter, and it is sufficient to me, but, just in case others didn't
So-
read through it or in total, maybe he could just give a verbal statement of how that, I know there's lots of other manufacturing companies in Western New York that have injection mold, machines, but, not being manufacturing people, most of us at the table, maybe we could just make a statement on that, one of them.
So,
Maybe I can comment
Go ahead, Jerry.
In terms of the raw materials, so I've learned a lot about the plastics industry since we started this process. And candidly, we learned a lot about PVC, but that's not on the table anymore. The materials to be used in the manufacture of things like the clear clamshell type of containers you'd see at Wegmans, or plastic knives, forks, and spoons, and other utensils, which would be the primary products of this facility, are made from polyethylene and polypropylene.
Mhm.
And I've given you material data sheets on that. They are inert, they are non-cancerous, they are non-hazardous. If you look at the material data safety sheets, the risks are if you touch it while it's melted, you will burn yourself. Those are the kind of risks that the material data safety sheets speak to, not carcinogens, not toxic fumes or anything like that. I spoke to a number of manufacturers. One is a subsidiary of Toshiba. The other is a company called Bole, B-O-L-E Machinery. They don't have literature that says something like, oh, don't worry, our stuff does not pollute, because that's not good marketing. But I did speak to them, and in terms of water cooling, I'm told both nationally and locally, you will always see a closed-loop cooling system, because it does not make sense, apparently, to pull in fresh water and cool it and then discharge it. So we do not need a New York Speedies permit. There will be no water discharge. The cooling water is recycled. As I've said in submissions, if no other reason, then it doesn't make sense to keep flushing the system with fresh water when it can simply be cooled. These raw materials called nurdles, they come in big sacks, and they sit on a pallet, and then the pallet is wrapped in plastic. When they come off the truck, they are stored on a pallet until they're used. And my best understanding is you will cut a bag and you put it into some kind of a container that has a vacuum-type hose on top of it, and then it is sucked into the machine. So you don't have people pouring materials loose in the machine and spilling it all over. If it is spilled, it's simply swept up. You can't put it back in the process because it's contaminated with whatever's been on the floor. So you use it for secondary purposes, not for making food containers, for making like plastic buckets, something where there's not any food exposure. In terms of the machinery itself, again, my approach was a picture's worth 1,000 words. I've seen videos of these machines running in an industrial plant, but there's nobody around, so you can't really tell if there's any concern about people nearby or what might happen to them. But then one of the manufacturers said, well, look, we were just at a trade show, here's a video of that. And that's the video that I invited you to look at, where people are at a trade show, they're walking around, it's not particularly noisy, it's heavily automated, and there's nobody like wearing masks or anything with it. It will just reach and stamp and then drop things in a bin or something, and it just goes continuously in that regard. So I'm just being candid with you. Does warm plastic smell? Probably. Is it toxic fumes? No. It's a contained process. I assume if you stuck your head into the machine, you would smell more melted plastic smell than you would otherwise. But it's sealed as much as possible, and there's no need for safety gear. There's no venting of fumes. I thought the trade show example helped me understand that it's not like a dangerous thing's going on because it's sitting right out there in the public. Is that does that address, in summarized for you?
Yes, I appreciate that, and the video was very helpful as well.
It helped me, that's why I wanted to share it.
Yeah, thank you. That's very accurate.
Imagine the ones at Delphi or GM are a little bigger than the ones we
Right.
saw.
Yes, since you brought it up, this process has been going on for 50 years, 300 yards away,
Yeah.
and thousands of pounds a day are made right next door.
Yeah. Good. Okay, other issues you want to make sure we discuss? I found it interesting personally that, since our meeting, I literally don't know if a day has gone by where in the public press, there hasn't been an article or a story on ChatGPT and AI from as recently as, yesterday with the U.S. Senate beginning to try and take a look at regulations, literally all the way on down through, more germane topics and information. But we left you everything from Terry's investigation to the actual information. I do think I added one article that I don't think I put in here because it was just the other day. There's a specific to ChatGPT, what are hallucinations and why are they a problem for AI systems, if you will. And this particular tech author, talks about how one of the most concerning issues is the phenomenon of hallucinations. And those are described as hallucinations in EI, refers to the generation of outputs that may sound plausible but are either factually incorrect and unrelated to the given context. The AI system hallucinates information that has not been explicitly trained on, leading to unreliable or misleading responses. So I just hadn't seen that phrase used before. Some of the other documents we gave you kind of showed the significant caution, I guess, necessary, if you will, related to, its use. So I just wanted to make sure you were aware of that, and I can add that into the record as well.
It may be valuable, Mr. Burton, we might put you on the spot a couple times, but that is why you're here. You've addressed many of these things by letter, but for the people listening and for the board here, in particular, I think it might be valuable for you to comment on the use of the GPI, and in particular with regard to, I guess I would say, the misuse of it as a search engine, and where things may have gone wrong for your applicant.
Absolutely. So when I came to the last meeting, at the end of the meeting, this ChatGPT, what would you call it? A summary. Abstract, thank you, of an alleged University of California study was brought to my attention. I hadn't seen it. I wasn't familiar with it. It allegedly, and looking at the abstract, it says PVC manufacturing is safe or something to that effect. And it was challenged correctly at the last meeting because it didn't pass a test to search if it was a ChatGPT generated document. The only thing I knew about ChatGPT was what I heard on National Public Radio and how it was used to basically cheat on term papers in schools and so on and so forth. That was the extent of my knowledge, and I did have enough knowledge to know that if it doesn't find an answer, it will make one up. So I took that. I asked that the board defer for some time consideration of the 3 CV Plastics application until I could get to the bottom of it. I spoke to Varun, and the story I got was as follows. The information assembled for Lockport IDA was assembled in India by people whose first language is not English. And what they did was they would basically use ChatGPT to help. I don't know its full functionality, but apparently you can ask it a question. It will generate an English response. You can look at the response with more limited English and say, yeah, that's right. It generated it right. And in that way, use ChatGPT as like an English translation tool with whatever language they were using. I think it's in like Southeast India, near the Sri Lanka side, I think, but I'm not certain of that. Whatever their customary language is, Hindi or something, this was used as a tool, a crutch, to make sure that they could put into English explanations about the plastics industry generally and the various products and so on. Where they went afoul was when they used ChatGPT as a search engine, like a Google or a Bing or something like that, and said, send me an article about the manufacturing of PVC pipe. And then they got this hit. But ChatGPT made it up. The people in India were not aware of that. They just thought it was a legitimate U.S.-style application. And so they went with it, but they didn't try to pull an article or something about that. I explained to Varun that ChatGPT is unreliable based on my limited knowledge from, again, National Public Radio, that it will generate bogus information. He was embarrassed. He felt very bad having submitted inaccurate information to the board. And for this, we've apologized. There was no deliberate attempt to mislead. We just have people in a different country trying to overcome language barriers, and it went astray. So we've asked that, we've apologized for that. We've asked that be disregarded. There is no truth to that story. Thereafter, when additional information was provided to the Lockport IDA, I submitted it, and I didn't do some abstract or redaction. I gave Mr. Sy a full report of whatever the technical information related to, so that there was no concern about some kind of a bogus reference any longer.
Sure. The only item I'll point to your attention is, you can find probably a handful of faults with the standard application for financial assistance, but personally I've always been troubled that it's not the easiest for folks to show what their phased job growth and projections are going to be. So I just wanted to highlight for you on number 5 there that the applicant did a good job of clarifying that for us, and that, immediately post-construction, it would be 9 FTEs. After 6 months of operation, 16 FTEs. And after 18 to 24 months, the total that we've seen of the 20 FTEs. For those of you that remember the Paris report that we do annually, it similarly sets that kind of 2 years post-start as kind of a finish point for tracking jobs, if you will. And you can see in 9 and 5 just the breakout by job title of what those positions will be. So I just wanted to make sure you were clear on that, because again, the application doesn't make it super easy to do that.
And again, I believe that was readdressed in the amendment letter to the application.
Mm-hmm.
All right, any other questions for Mr. Burton from the board?
In the room, we can send some to him.
Okay, all right. That covers old business for the guests that are here. We're just going to move to our general meeting. You're welcome to stay unless we move into executive session. If you have any questions related to this application, after the meeting, you could reach out to Tom Sawyer, Director, or if you have any comments for him. At this time, we're just going to move ahead with our general meeting.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. Varun, I'll let you go. Appreciate you calling in. Thanks.
Thank you, Tom.
Yep. No, you want to find out about an 85-cent bottle right
You would
there?
leave too, because I danced.
We haven't got a little bit of time yet.
Sorry, no offense.
Hey, right.
Back to normal.
Exactly. All right, you have minutes in front of you. If you've had a chance to take a look at it, I'll take a motion for approval.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Motion by Darlene, second by Dan, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion carries. And treasurer's report, Kristen?
All right, starting with the income statement, the only, income we had this month was interest, but nice hefty interest of $5,411. I did take a look at the interest since the end of December to now, and it has increased from, I'm relying on memory, but less than 1% to about 3%, currently, so that's nice. We had $5,806 in expenses, leading to almost almost zero, but a $395 net loss. Some of those, the meeting expense is a credit because there was a refund of
Yeah,
sales
there
tax.
was weird stuff. There was, I got the particulars. There was a $112 credit from the Albany Hilton. That may have been yours truly and tax exempt. My 85-cent bottle return, and that really kind of covers it, so, yeah.
Okay, cool. And on a year-to-date basis, we're at a net profit of $212,000 versus a budgeted even. So that should carry us through the end of the year quite easily.
Mhm.
And on the statement of cash transactions on the next page, you'll see that we have total cash of $1.9 million between our checking and our savings. You see the bottom return of 85 cents there. And then interest, and that, not sure what that $200.
Yeah, that Sizerex is, you'll recall, it's up north hosting not being in a position, well, at least as of yet, to mow their own property. We went ahead when Lon Smith was in the park and had them brush hog, still doesn't look great, but brush hog their property, and we charged Sizerex/TTM/up north, and they reimbursed us for that.
We did transfer $6,000 from our savings to our checkings to cover the disbursements of about $6,000. Nothing unusual there. All our signs, as we've been discussing in our meetings, has been the refurbishing of the signs.
Mhm.
Then on the balance sheet, the cash ties over to the $1.9 million. Property liabilities, nothing out of the ordinary there, nothing new. So you have $2.9 million in total assets equaling our $2.9 in total liabilities. And so I would like to ask for a motion to approve
Yeah.
the
All right.
statements.
I'll make a motion.
Motion by Bob, second by Janine, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Okay.
Thanks for the detail on the interest, too.
Oh,
I had
yeah.
asked Kristen about that. She, so quickly got the information back to me. We had met with the guy from Evans a couple months ago, and he committed to us that he would continue to monitor the interest rate and fight for us to give us as much interest as he could. And he's held to his word on that, and it has gone from about 0 to 3.1% interest rate, I think, on our account, which is pretty substantial on, $1.5 million, so. Thank you.
Okay, and then the monthly bills for September, asking for approval of total payments of $6,940.86. The bulk of that is our monthly contract with the town, and then $2,523.68 for spring cutting and landscape maintenance of our 2 island entrances to Lawn Smith.
Shockingly, because Lon Smith is usually right on the ball billing wise, they hadn't billed us for the spring cleanup, so that's why you see those two together.
All right, so I have to make
All right, we've got the invoices presented by Kristen. I'll take a second on that.
I'll second it.
All right, second by Darlene, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Kristen. And moving on to the administrative director's report.
Let me just find got too much stuff going on in here, really.
We have more details in there.
Yeah, I do, actually, but it won't be the end of the world if I can't, but it's just, this money.
Don't know if you would know where it was.
That's really weird. Huh. Well, I'll start while I'm looking. The Aviant sale, here it comes. I may have let everybody know the purchase offer that's been accepted by Aviant is an existing park tenant. Publicly, I won't recognize that yet, only because there's if it's a 45 or 60-day due diligence period they're in, that could theoretically set it astray, but I don't expect that to be the case. On the one hand, that's a positive that it would be a known entity that sees the need to expand pretty significantly. On the Emerson Renwick, I did have the opportunity since our last meeting to meet with Eric Watson, who is the soon-to-be new owner. I don't know that the closing has taken place quite yet. They're from Watson Enterprises in Albion. They do not, I think, as I mentioned, have tenant identified. So I have sent this past week 2 local businesses to them. Hannah Real Estate has done a nice job putting together a lease brochure already, so I was able to forward that leasing brochure to 2 Lockport area businesses, so we'll have to see. I also attempted to try and find some temporary space for Emerson Renwick. I won't go into details, it's just that they would like to maintain kind of a small office and a small shop to begin to service entities, none the least of which is, GM, where they have a number of machines over there. So I don't know if any of the ones I sent to him will work, but they are looking for local space. I'm just going to re-mention the Moe Industries open house. It's on the 26th from 10 to 3. Keep an email out for me. I'm going to talk next week to the town council to set up a time for some of them to come with me to that. And if you're interested in knowing what that time is, I'll let you know. But, especially maybe Terry and Kristen that haven't been there before, if you can take a peek during the open house, that would be, I think, educational. I also included just 4 slides from the presentation I sat through on the ISO, or the Independent System Operators of the electric grid in New York. Just 3 or 4 I think you'd find interesting. First, I think it's interesting that and mind you, they're independent. This isn't somebody that's got to pay attention to what NYSERDA wants. This isn't somebody that has to pay attention to kind of the governor's office. They, have their obligations to maintain, adequate, reliable power. But I thought it was interesting that they admit that it's public policies that are driving the rapid change in the electric system and not, let's say, market forces, if you will. Another very disturbing bullet point that the generators, i.e. most likely fossil fuel generators, are retiring at a faster pace than the new renewable supply is entering service. And I think I've mentioned before, for every megawatt of power generated by fossil fuels, there's a need for 3 megawatts of energy generated by renewable energies due to the reliability problems. So you can get a sense of that. I just thought you'd find this interesting. If you compare upstate to downstate in this next slide, in terms of how energy is produced or was in 2022, in upstate, it's almost exclusively hydro, nuclear, wind, and solar. It's only those last 1, 6, 1, and 1 that are kind of fossil fuel sources. So that certainly was news to me. Conversely, which I think is where the issue is, you drop down to the next icon, if you will, there, at least 85, maybe it's even closer to 95% of the fuel providing power for New York City is fossil fuel. So I might just say once again, the statewide issue is really a New York City-based issue. Another quick slide. They take a look at, well, wait a minute, when do we lose our security margin? If you look at that next slide, and that CHPE you see referenced is one of the main grid upgrades. But you can see already that in New York City, they are not able to hit the security margin in terms of power that they'd like to see, which is scary. And then most importantly, the very last slide shows them beginning to try and anticipate the big power hungry projects that are coming online through economic development. Think Plug Power, think Edwards Vacuum, maybe most notably think Micron. And you can start to see in those out years, really as recently as 2026, they're not able to necessarily meet that demand. And as you get out to like the 2030, there's a significant deficit in the ability to meet that demand. And that's as of today. I'll talk about an entity and exec that had a project that won't happen, but had even similarly crazy energy needs. New York State Economic Development, the CEO was in Buffalo this past Tuesday. It was a good chance to go up and kind of rewind, meet some of our colleagues, but more importantly, it's no surprise that we would make the argument that there's, if not anti-IDA rhetoric, often in the press, ignorant reporting vis-a-vis IDAs, and you're going to see an effort in the coming months to kind of push back and do more education on that. So I only mentioned the Rail Trail Phase 2 because since we last met, we had a meeting with the city of Lockport. If you remember, that rail trail will only end at the city limits. The city hasn't kind of figured out the project, and we did that meeting because Brian Smith, who headed up GLDC, left, and it was an effort to get Heather Peck, the new CEO, up to speed and hopefully have them eventually look to finish the project at their end of the city, basically taking it out to Hinman Road. More important, I've begun to do a little bit of work on the FAST grant. You saw where we were one of 7 statewide FAST grants, albeit probably the least dollar amount. And that's, remember, trying to get shovel-ready sites available. It is a 50% match, so of our $64K we won, we would be spending probably close to that $64K. Reminder, this is for IDA Park South, and it's all pre-development work. I've had a kickoff meeting with Empire State Development. I think you never know, given the state agencies we deal with, of what kind of idiosyncrasies they would have. I would say that at this point, Empire State Development seems pretty straightforward. The only thing I owe them right now is a draft budget. But to remind you, the studies that will be eventually going out to RFP for would be most notably a wetlands update, a SHPO study, historic preservation study, some rediscussion, if you will, vis-a-vis the DEC bird situation, and believe it or not, actually a new boundary survey. And then once that's all done, phase 2 of that grant really is all the engineering you'd expect us to be trying to put together. And the last item I have is I did have Wendell go ahead and do a boundary survey of the 5-acre parcel here. 1, it's our largest parcel left, but 2, it has been getting a lot of interest of late. And it's always difficult for me to go to someone and say, hey, you're looking to build a XYZ size facility positioned on the property this way. Will that work without a boundary survey? So that's been done. I've shared it with one of the interested parties. I'll have it as other interest develops, but appreciate Wendell's assistance on that.
All right, thanks, Tom. Any questions for Tom? All right, attorney's report.
I have some business I'd like to discuss with you with regard to the ongoing litigation with Yahoo in executive session. I would note that I'm anticipating a board action after our executive session, but I want to discuss it with you in executive first. So I'd be asking for that. Otherwise, I don't have anything additional at this moment.
Okay. Any new business before we move to that? All right. I'll take a motion to move into executive session for consultation with attorney.
So moved.
Motion by Dan, second by Bob. All in favor?
Aye.
All right. So our next order of business is to approve or authorize our legal counsel, Tom Seaman, to negotiate contract. Do you want to read that?
Yeah, I'll read it. I added to it.
Okay.
I'm looking for a motion that'll authorize the settlement of the IDA's lawsuit against Yahoo Holding, Inc. et al., contingent on attorney approval of all settlement documents, including but not limited to the settlement agreement, deed and transfer documents, releases, and stipulation of discontinuance, and to authorize the chairman, administrative director, and/or attorney to execute any and all documents related thereto, and to authorize proceeding with the clawback/repurchase of the parcel at issue and expenditure of the funds necessary. That's the motion that I would be looking for, please.
All right, I'll take a motion.
I'll make that motion.
Motion by Janine,
I'll second.
second by Bob. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right.
Very good, thank you.
Tom. Great job.
Thank you.
Next meeting is October 12th, 8 a.m. If you have an issue with that date, it says, okay, forget it. You let Tom know. My brain was jumping around there. And I guess that's it for this meeting. So I'll take a motion to adjourn the meeting.
So moved.
Second. All right. Exactly, right on the dot.